Hi guys, Steven Moffat here, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be reviewing the third episode of the series 1, or series 14, with Nunsuti Gatwa, Boom, written by Steven Moffat, which, in fairness, I'd argue this is probably the most anticipated episode for fans, if you're a fan of Doctor Who, because he created the kind of series 5 with Matt Smith onwards to Capaldi, and so he did the series 5 on to series 10. So he's quite a respected writer, with a lot of his stories beforehand under Rusty Davis's vision being quite well liked, such as Blink, Girl in the Fireplace, Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead. All those stories were written by Steven Moffat, so a lot of people were quite excited for this one. I'd argue some almost probably on the same level, if not more excited for this than like Russell D Davis's storyline in many respects. So it's probably the kind of key one that everyone was kind of wanting to see, because they released the first two that I've reviewed already, Space Babies and Devil's Cord, at the same time, and then this was the week after. So I think this was a kind of like the build up to the one that Steven Moffat had penned. Before we get into this though properly, if you do like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does really help me out. But getting straight into it, the story itself is quite a nice story in terms of it's quite I think it's called a bottle story or bottleneck story, where basically they're sort of in one location for the whole episode, because the premise of Boom is quite simple. The Doctor, this man gets killed at the beginning by this like machine, this like service robot machine thing that's meant to help heal people. It's like a medical station, but it decides that if you're too injured to fight in this war, that they'll kill you rather than like saving you, whatever. Then the Doctor kind of finds this dead body of this person, but then steps on a landmine. Now, the landmines explode quite quickly and quite scarily on impact, and the Doctor manages to kind of stop it from going, and the whole episode is kind of like the continuation to trying to build, like it's like the build up of the bomb slowly going off. And at the beginning, the Doctor, and Shigatwa's Doctor, he spends a lot of time on one leg trying to lay on this bomb, which is pretty impressive from the actor's standpoint. I thought I was really impressed from the actor's standpoint. And then they kind of do that whole sort of, they kind of level his foot out, but it takes a lot of effort, and a little bit more goes up, and then people come and find that the Doctor's here and all this sort of thing. The plot twist of the kind of thing with the bomb is, the way the bomb works is it's sort of like, doesn't explode as if like a normal landmine that we know. It's like it uses the person's energy, I think, to kind of like cause an explosion. The kind of plot twist though is that because the Doctor is a Time Lord, so therefore has a different biology to that of a human, he could like decimate the whole planet, which is kind of like the like climax of that point. There's also a new character, Mundy Flynn, who is played by Verada Sethu, I want to say she was called, who's meant to become the actress who's playing the new companion. So she was in this as well, which was weird to see, considering that they kind of already announced that she was in this like next season, after this season 2. So it was interesting to see her in this kind of in this role, and whether or not they kind of come back to Mundy Flynn, and she's going to be playing Mundy Flynn again, or whether or not she plays a new character, we're not sure yet. But we'll have to kind of wait till season 2, maybe the Christmas special will kind of give us a few hints about it, but it's probably more likely going to be the second series, hopefully, that comes out next year, that will tell us more about Monday Flynn, if it's Monday Flynn, is she's playing or she's playing a new character. But yeah, it's quite a strong episode, I think, in many respects. It's quite, because obviously there's this constant threat of this bomb kind of going off, all the characters being quite careful, and it's that sort of like, well, how can they save the Doctor? How can the Doctor get off the bomb? How can he get saved? And I think it's got that nice intensity to it, and that nice, like, it's quite serious. It's quite like you are thinking, oh, how can they get out of this one? Then the kind of like, there's like a side plot line going on where there is another camp. So the people who are fighting this war are like priests, similar to the Matt Smith story with the Weeping Angels. River Song's captured by the priest, like the priesthood. She's with the priesthood. I think it's those same kind of people. But she's the Anglican Marines, they're called, I believe, and they're kind of like fighting this war with people they don't really know. They can't see these people. So the story kind of goes on, and there's this like, so the service bot's still there, and when it detects like battle, it will come over to check for injuries, at which point it can kill people, which is quite problematic. But then, weirdly enough, the kind of climax of the episode is that Monday Flynn has like, there's some other guy who she's like, the kind of like someone who has like a love interest with Monday Flynn, who is another Anglican Marine back at the kind of camp. And after she's come out with the bloke's daughter from the beginning, for the guy from the beginning episode's daughter kind of comes, she also comes out with Monday Flynn, and they kind of both go searching for what's her father, I think, basically. And that's when they meet the Doctor and they meet Ruby, who's kind of, in this one, she kind of gets a bit more later on, but at the beginning it's kind of hard, because obviously the Doctor's kind of in this really life or death situation. She sort of is there trying to help, but it's not really integral to the storyline. And I'd probably say, if you're thinking about the strongest stories for each of the characters, I'd probably say this is her weakest story, purely because I think that it was written for it to kind of be focused on the Doctor as opposed to focused on the companion, especially when you consider that the next episode is 73 Yards, which hopefully I will review next week, but is very much a companion heavy story. So it doesn't, I don't think it particularly matters too much, especially on rewatches, but it was just something I noticed, that it's kind of like, she didn't really feel like she was that, like she had that much to do at the beginning especially, but then once this guy starts to search for them, they get to this point where the service robot comes, and I can't remember, I think the service robot then wants to take the Doctor, so they decide, Ruby decides to shoot Monday Flynn in like the foot or in the stomach or something, just enough to distract the service robot, because then he will detect combat and leave and go and follow her. But then just as she's about to do it, this guy comes out of nowhere thinking that Ruby's trying to kill Monday Flynn, and he just lights her up, and then she falls, and it looks like she's died, to be fair. I think she had probably died for a little while. And then the kind of service robot is like trying to somewhat heal her, but it's not really doing anything because she's kind of already dead. It's kind of like quite a shocking moment, because you don't expect it, especially when you're first watching it. If you're watching it when it's first released, you don't expect Ruby to die, or somewhat die, because it's happened in the past. I think Steven Moffat is most well known for killing off characters like Rory and Clara and bringing them back, but I thought it was quite a shocking sort of, she just gets shot and you just weren't expecting it, which I thought was quite well done. But then also, as I say, it then means that she's more or less out of the episode for the rest of it. She just sort of lies on the floor until the very end of the episode. It's just kind of like, it was really good because it had a shock value, but that was probably the most she did up until that point, was kind of like trying to help shoot Monday Flynn, and then she gets basically killed, and then she's basically not, and then she doesn't do anything for the rest of the episode until like the last like 3 minutes when they've after the resolution. And that's the final problem with this episode. A lot of people praised it when it came out. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it, which is fair enough. My main problem, my main issue with this story is kind of the resolution, because the Doctor basically theorizes that the service robot is like corrupt. It's sort of corrupted by, like, you know, the people who created all of this stuff. So it's basically just one kind of political comment on capitalism, and it turns out there isn't an enemy. The Anglican Marines aren't fighting an enemy. They're kind of fighting themselves using equipment that the kind of capitalist companies have created for them. So the Doctor uses the memory of this girl's dead dad, who died at the beginning of the episode, to kind of like infiltrate the system and trying to hack it, sort of thing, which he does, because he kind of does it to kind of help his daughter. But also, there's also this idea, I think, that the Doctor... Yeah, so then they kind of realise, oh, well, if they surrender, then they're going to kind of turn off all of the equipment, and all the equipment's going to stop, and all that sort of thing. So the Doctor basically forces the end of the war with the surrender, and then the bomb kind of diffuses because, well, if the war's over, then the bombs can't go off, because I suppose it's that idea that it's the rules of war, which I was thinking is probably not the most realistic thing, because if you think about something like World War One, technically the Germans surrendered before the war ended. Like, by the 11th of September 1918, the World War One soldiers knew that the war had ended, hence why a lot of captains and stuff and generals told them to just try and kill as many Germans as possible in some stories, because they kind of knew this was the last time that they could do it, and then once it hit 11 o'clock the war was over, sort of thing. But it was still like, despite the treaty, like the Armistice Treaty being signed a bit before that, they kind of agreed that was the final date. So even if you kind of ignore the fact that it was quite a quick, like, okay, that's it, okay, the war's done, okay, fine, no, that's it, that's everything, everyone knows now, the war's done. Aside from that sort of quick resolution, because obviously it's 45 minutes and it would make no sense if it kind of kept going on, because he needed a resolution, sorry. It then also the service robot then managed to help bring Millie Gibson's Ruby Sunday back to life, which, again, it felt a little bit contrived, kind of like confused, just purely because I think he really wanted to try to have that impactful moment of she dies or she's pretty much dead. But then equally, he's not the writer of all the episodes. He wrote this one, and Rusty D. Davis obviously needed to use her character for later on in the show, so it made it hard for him to kind of, you know, make that impactful moment stick, because, well, he had to bring her back, which I think was a problem for him. That but I might be wrong. Maybe that was always the plan. But it feels like he really wanted that impactful moment of her dying, or basically dying, or being really close to death. But he couldn't, so he had to kind of make sure she was okay, and she was pretty much fine. Like, there was no injuries sustained from the fact she was shot in the back 3 times or something. She didn't seem particularly bothered by it. There's no emotional scarring, you know. I know that it's Doctor Who and maybe that's not sort of what you should be looking at, but it just feels like that was kind of not really thought about or brought up again. Like, they never brought up again that she was shot. She was basically dead. Like, even at the end of the episode, the resolution, she didn't like seem to care that much. She was like, okay. She was really happy to see that it's the first time Ruby was not on Earth, so it was like, oh, so, I mean, yeah, so it was like, oh my god, this is so cool, this planet's so cool, and then it just kind of like, right, okay, enough of that, we'll go back into the TARDIS, and that was sort of the end of the episode. I think, personally, I think a lot of people were really excited to see Moffat come back, as I was, because I think Moffat's such a good writer. He wrote 2 of my favourite new series episodes of all time, Heaven Sent and More Than Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. I think those 2 stories are brilliant, and he wrote both of them, so I was always quite looking forward to him coming back, and I believe he wrote the coming up Christmas special, Joy to the World, I believe it's called, which, you know, should be quite exciting to see what he does with that. But as I say, the main problem was I felt that the resolution of the story felt a little bit rushed, a bit contrived. It felt like he wrote the story with the idea of the plot, but he didn't write it with an idea of the kind of resolution, so it meant that it felt a little bit kind of all convenient for the Doctor. But, you know, it's a 45-minute episode, so I suppose you have to give it some leeway here and there, because you can't always satisfyingly do it in 45 minutes, especially with more of an ambitious story. But it was a shame, because I feel like if it was like maybe a bit longer, the episode was a bit longer, or there was more to the episode, it was more 2 parts, and the Doctor got caught in the bomb a little bit later in the first episode, and then in the second episode there was more of this and more explanation. That could have worked, but it's not the way that it was done. So overall, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10, I'd say, probably. I think the ending sort of lets it down a little bit, and also the kind of like Disney kind of budget looking kind of CGI, I think also felt a bit off. But that's not necessarily the story itself's fault. I think that's just more that in my opinion, I didn't particularly care as much for like the nice looking places as much, like a Star Wars kind of setting. I prefer the more Doctor Who looking stuff, but my personal preference. So, but yeah, I'd say that the letdown of the kind of like little bit at the end, and also just the fact that Ruby Sunday doesn't particularly do loads, I'd say overall probably about a 7 out of 10 is my kind of view of it. But if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does help me out. And if you want to watch, another one of my videos, like my other rankings, then that would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, see ya.